Hey guys, this is Amy and welcome to my little corner of Booktube. If you're new to my channel, welcome and don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and if you are a subscriber, welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing the Booktube Boujee tag. I found this tag first in trying to find if there was a tag for Booktube consumerism, and this was the closest one that I could find. It was originally created by booktuber Olive at a Book Olive, and so she created it like well over a year ago, but some booktubers are still doing it, and I thought, this is kind of what I've been thinking about right now in terms of consumerism, materialism, and all those sort of things, so I thought I would give this one a go. Alrighty then, question number 1. What is your average monthly budget for books? I didn't used to always be this way, but as of right now and within the last year, I have a very firm budget. When it comes to books, I do not spend more than $50 per month on books. And actually, that $50 budget isn't even necessarily restricted to books. Like for me, that is what I call my self-care budget, and that could encompass anything from jewelry or clothing, but just the reality of with things in quarantine and my job telling me, we'll probably be working from home until February, I don't need to be spending money on new office pencil dresses or accessories anymore because I'm doing my work in my pajamas. So pretty much all of that $50 budget is going to books now. Question number 2. What's the most you've ever spent in a bookstore? Well, I can't recall any specific event. All I know is that most likely the most I ever spent in a bookstore would be at Syracuse University at the University Bookstore, where I'm sure I dropped like $300 or more specifically on textbooks, because I went to college, did my undergrad between 2009 and 2013. And then when I went to grad school, did my 2 masters from 2013 to 2017, and grad school students, or should I say professors, started to be more cognizant and aware of the heavy financial burden on some of these very specialized books, and a lot of professors made the effort to make the specific chapters of those books available on PDF, on online platforms for their students. So I felt as I got older and progressed in school, that sort of problem diminished quite a bit, although there was one professor I had in grad school, because I know this isn't the most I've spent on like textbooks, because again, I probably dropped several $100s at one point in my undergrad studies, but the one that really irks me is I was in a grad level course that was entirely devoted to Islamic architecture, and my final paper was about calligraphy, the use of artistically drawing like the Arabic alphabet, because in Islam it's considered heretical to try and depict like real life images of people, because that's like trying to make yourself like God, like in that culture. So I was researching my paper for Islamic calligraphy, and I was in the midst of my drafts, and the deadline was coming up, and my professor is like, okay, there's this one book that you definitely have to cite, and basically inferred that if I did not cite this specific book about Islamic calligraphy, that he was going to mark my paper down. And so I went to, the book was not at the regular university library, the main library, it was actually at the fine arts library. And so I went to go check it out, only to realize that this book was one of those very special books that they didn't even allow you to take out of the library. You could only have it for 2-hour intervals, and I just did not have the time for that to finish my paper. So I had to shell out $90 for this specific book on Islamic calligraphy by Sheila S. Blair. And again, I still love, the subject of Islamic calligraphy. I think it's fascinating, and I'm glad I have it personally, like now, for my own reference, but at the time, I was deeply resentful, both of my professor for demanding this of me and of the university for not having it as a normal library book that I could check out and be able to finish my paper like a normal person. Anyway, I digress. Question number 3. Are you willing to pay full price for a brand new release, or will you wait until you have a coupon or there's a sale? So in the past, no, I would absolutely not spend the amount of money for a brand new release, like, $17 to $20. That was just ridiculous to me. Nowadays, since I've started my book podcast and since I've started interviewing poets and writers and bringing on guest speakers to my podcast that are editors in the publishing industry, and from all those exercises, I now do have a genuine interest for the first time in buying books in real time as writers are writing them and as publishers are publishing them to maybe better understand certain trends. But that being said, I'm still not going to go completely abandon my sort of thrifty nature. And so within that $50 budget that I discussed in the previous question, I limit myself where I only buy one brand new hardcover release. I will not go all out and spend only get 2 or 3 books of that month and get brand new releases. I limit myself to just one brand new release per month, and then the rest of that $50 goes to, searching for and buying good condition used copies at other various stores and outlets. Question number 4. Would you rather buy one new book or several less expensive used copies? Again, going off the previous question, more often than not, I definitely prefer to buy multiple books for less. And again, I only limit myself to the one brand new release. And so that gives me plenty of opportunity to make the most of my budget. And I can really find, really nice hard copies of older books. And so that is basically how I've come to consume books now. Question number 5. What do you think is a reasonable price for a new hardback book, a paperback, and an ebook? Well, I think in talking to writers and, wanting to support writers, support authors, I would say that the typical price between $17 and $20 for a brand new hardcover is reasonable. I think going above $20 for a hardcover, for a typical hardcover and its typical size, I think that would be a little excessive. The one thing I will say is I really firmly believe that the paperbacks should be made available at the same time as the hardcover, and still be the same price that they are now, which can range probably between $10 and $15, but they should be made available at the same time, because what the publishers are trying to do is they're trying to lambaste you into pressuring you into buying the hardcover so that you can read it immediately with everyone else and be part of the posse. But yeah, I don't like that element of the publishing. I think paperback and hardcover should be done at the same time. For ebooks, having self-published on Amazon and looked at the differing prices between, royalties, I price my paperbacks at $9.99 and then I price my ebooks at $4.99, and I think $4.99 is a perfectly reasonable price for an ebook, even brand new, because that gives, some money to the author. It gives some money to the publishers. And again, with ebooks, it's not the same publishing cost as it is for, physical books. So I think, for some ebooks that are charged $9.99 or whatever, I would just go out and, get a paperback or a hardcover if it's going to be that expensive anyway. All right. Question number 6. Is a signed book worth more to you? How about a first edition? I can say with certainty that I don't think I've ever owned a signed copy of a book. Not that I don't admire a lot of writers, but just going to book signings or meeting authors, that just hasn't been my style. And so I always placed more emphasis on the story. I didn't need, go excessively out of my way to get my hands on a signed copy. And certainly for some of the really famous authors that I would want signed copies, I'm sure the price would be something that I would not be willing to pay. So probably not. Question number 7. What is your most valuable book, sentimental or actual value? Well, I thought about this question and I basically had a tie between 2 specific books. The one that has the most sentimental value to me is The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. And it's kind of weird because this is the only book to legitimately give me nightmares, but it was just so brilliantly written and goes into in-depth history of the actual Dracula, Vlad the Impaler, and into his history, and the characters travel through Budapest, Bulgaria, Istanbul, and I've studied in Istanbul, so a lot of these places I've actually been to, so the book was super relatable to me, and it's all about, the intricacies and maybe intrigues in academia, so I could relate on this on so many levels, and it was such a beautifully written classic that definitely this is my most valuable book at this point sentimentally, and I was able to get a decent used hardback copy for only $6 and free shipping. The other book that I think is most valuable and definitely probably, still sentimental, more sentimental to me than monetarily, although I acknowledge that probably this could have some value. So this is a poetry book that I found at a library discount book sale. And at first, I thought it was just like, oh, it's a nice poetry anthology. I love poetry, both modern and classical. This is just a nice thing to have. So I bought it, and then I came home and I realized that there was something in the pages. Like, clearly this book had not been opened for many, many years. And so what I found in the book was actually a little typewritten assignment from someone who had this book. And do you know what the date is? Yeah, 1931. This thing is that old. And so I think at some point I'm going to kind of, frame this. But it's just really nice to see just this little piece of literary history. And I just think it's so cute. And this is why I love library discount book sales. Question number 8. Will you pay more for a cover or edition you like better? I definitely will, if it's a particular classic that I really, really want. Yes, I will shell out the money for a fancy edition. Although actually when it comes to the classics, my favorite collectible edition are the leather-bound ones from Barnes & Noble's. And these are actually not that expensive. They're $10 a pop. So I have a variety of classics within this edition. This just happens to be Sense and Sensibility, one of my favorite Jane Austen novels. I've also got Wuthering Heights here. Again, really great. And then here is Dracula. And I've got Jane Eyre, I've got The Scarlet Letter, I've got Pride and Prejudice. I've got all of those in these special collectible editions. The only thing is that I wish they would make more of them in this edition, because I wish they would make all the Austen novels in this specific edition, but they don't. They've only made Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, and Persuasion, of all things. But the only book I can think of that I would really, really spend a lot of money on is I'm a lover of Gothic literature, and I really resonated with the character of Catherine in Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. So if I was in a position to do so, if I found this old 19th century edition of Northanger Abbey, I would definitely want to buy that. Question number 9. What physical characteristics does a good quality book have? Well, actually, I think probably these editions are kind of what I really like in, a special hardcover, because actually with hardcovers, sure, they're more durable, but I'm not the biggest fan of dust jackets. I like sort of hardcovers that are sort of, indented like this and have the design on the book itself. So it's not just the dust cover and you open it and it's just a plain hardcover book. I like the designs on the actual physical book, not cheating with the dust cover. So that's personally my preference. Question number 10. If you won the lottery, what bookish things would you do with the money? Well, certainly if I won the lottery, there'd be many things I do non-book related, but specifically that are bookish. I would definitely want to go on several literary pilgrimages, be it probably a lot of them in England, with Harry Potter and Jane Austen and the Brontes and things like that. And again, certainly I would also want to, as I mentioned, those very few that I would want really fancy, expensive special editions of, I would get those books. And then I would just design my home library to be totally epic. And then we have a bonus question that Olive made, which is, Give us an image, actual or mental, of your dream home library. Well, I think my dream home library, I either want it to be super minimalist with like floating shelves with brackets, or I would want to be completely super traditional with the super heavy like mahogany bookshelves with the spiral staircase and the fireplace and the globe sitting, next to the bar or whatever. So I would probably be very old school, and that would probably be what my husband would want as well. So hopefully when we get into our forever home, that may one day become a reality. So those are all the questions for the Boujee Booktuber book tag, but in addition to that, I also wanted to do a tiny book haul, specifically from Goodwill, to show you just how thrifty you can be and what little treasures you can find. And I don't know if this is universal of all Goodwills. When it comes to clothing and books, my Goodwill in Bloomington, Indiana is really, really good, and I think that's a testament to the fact that I live in a college town where a lot of people are moving in and out of apartments, and I think Goodwill ends up with a lot of good quality stuff, books included, not because people like necessarily think those items are trash. It's just they don't have the time or the means to put those things in storage or sell them to make a little profit. But that's okay, because their laziness benefits the community. So what did I buy at Goodwill? This was just like a week ago, and I was able to get this English poetry anthology, English Poetry in Transition, and I have a book entirely devoted to Victorian poetry. I have a book devoted to romantic poetry. I have a lot of the modern Insta poets, but this one I picked up specifically because it's poetry between 1880 and 1920s, transitioning between the 19th and the 20th century. So I'm just like, you know what? I don't have very much on that, so I'm gonna get it. And it was 99 cents. And again, all the books at Goodwill, all the paperbacks were 99 cents, and then the hardcovers were $2.49. Again, really great. And again, another poetry book that I found in the classics section of Goodwill, it is The Portable Coleridge, and I found him because he was a prominent figure in the Romantic period. I've have him mention a few of my other poetry books, but I thought it would be a worthwhile investment to get an entire book just about him. And then I also got the, of course, Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. My father is really crazy about this book. I actually bought him the Barnes & Noble collectible edition and gave it to him one Christmas. I personally bought this book because I didn't have it, and I know I'm going to cover it in my Sublimely Gothic podcast where I cover Gothic literature. This is probably going to be in season 2 or season 3, so keep an eye out for that. So that's why I got it, just to have it on standby. The next book I got looks like a historical fiction. It's called The Illuminator, and what does it say? It is England in the late 14th century, a time when the old feudal order is starting to crack, but the whim of a lord or the pleasure of a bishop still has the power to seal nearly anyone's fate. Books are rare and costly, painstakingly lettered by hand and illuminated with exquisite paintings. For Lady Catherine of Blackingham Manor, a widow and a mother trying to safeguard her holdings without the dubious protection of her late husband, it is a time made of both sweeter and more perilous by the arrival of a master and illuminator called Finn. Caught between the king's taxes and the church's tills, Catherine strikes a bargain with the local abbot. She will take Finn and his petty young daughter into the household in exchange for the monastery's protection. So yeah, definitely probably the best things you're gonna get at Goodwill, at least that I found at my Goodwill, is those sort of classics that I mentioned, and then also historical fiction. Like, those tend to be the things I veer towards. Of course, there are plenty romance novels, plenty of thrillers, and I do like mystery, but I like specifically historical mysteries. So yeah. So again, I'm pretty interested. It was a national bestseller. I'm interested to see how it will pan out. And then we've got another one, which is The Dream of Scipio, which, what does it say? In The Dream of Scipio, Pear's finest book yet, the acclaimed author of An Instance of Fingerpoint intertwines 3 intellectual mysteries, 3 love stories, all 3 of the darkest moments of human history. United by classical texts called The Dream of Scipio, 3 men struggle to find refuge from their hearts and minds from the madness that surrounds them in the final days of the Roman Empire, in the grim years of the Black Death, and in the direst hours of World War II. So yeah, again, junkie for historical fiction. I love it, and I especially love when there's interwoven history of different time periods. Sometimes when author does, it can be very jumbled, but when it is done well, it is brilliant. And because it says national bestseller, I'm hoping that this will live up to its reputation. Probably the biggest find that I was able to find at Goodwill, and it was the only hardcover that I bought, which is The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. And I actually picked up 1,000 Splendid Suns at my library discount book sale, and I read it, and I really, really loved it. And I realized that wasn't his first book, so when I found this in hardcover in a as good of condition as it is, I'm like, of course, I'm gonna get that. I have to get it. There's no question. So altogether, those 6 books cost $7.44. I'll probably do a different Booktube tag about, Booktube consumerism. And I think there's such a huge range on the spectrum, one being the extreme of going all out, constantly buying new hardcovers, to being super thrifty and not barely buying books at all, just using your library, kind of like Reads with Cindy, the way she consumes books. But I think for the most of us, we're all in the middle, and we prioritize in what do we want as used books, what do we want as new, what do we want specifically as collectibles. And definitely by being able to be thrifty with Goodwill and half-price books and other things, that we are able to save the money to invest in the really expensive collectible editions that we do want. Alrighty then, that is the end of the episode. Make sure to hit the subscription button and leave a comment on how do you feel about how you consume books and all of that jazz. So have a good day, everyone. Bye. Disclaimer, these are not my books. This is my husband's philosophy shelf. He has everyone from Plato's Republic to the Leviathan by Hobbes to Machiavelli, The Prince. He's got everything. So big. And these aren't even all of them. He still has plenty in storage that he needs to bring home. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Don't forget to hit the subscription button and leave a comment and let me know what you thought of the video, and how do you feel about some of the questions, how do we differ, how are we the same? Let me know, and have a wonderful day.